of your busy lives on this Sunday afternoon. I know everyone has many obligations, and you have chosen to be here, and I thank you for the generosity of your time. And thank you. And you know, look, when I look around here, I know there is one reason for sure that we are all here together, and it is because we love our country. We love our country. And you know, here's the thing. We are made for moments like this. We have to remember that. We are made for moments like this. Because this is a moment that is an inflection moment. Indeed it is. This is a moment in time that is requiring us to look in a mirror and ask a question. That question being, who are we? And I think we all know part of the answer to that question is we are better than this.
Yes.
So this is a moment in time that is requiring us to fight for the best of who we are, and fight we will. And this fight is not new to us. We know how to fight. We like a good fight. It was a good fight that born our nation. All that we have achieved over the years was achieved because we've been prepared to fight for the best of who we are. So we're good and ready for this fight. We're good and ready for this fight. And I'll tell you, I was born out of a community and family that were fighters. My parents met when they were active in the civil rights movement in Oakland and Berkeley, California in the 1960s. My sister Maya and I, we joke that we grew up surrounded by a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting. For justice, and Greensboro knows that well. That Woolworth's counter. And among all those heroes, those students, Thurgood Marshall, Charles Hamilton Houston, Constance Baker Motley, right? All those people who understood the meaning and the need to fight for those words we spoke in 1776, that we are all equal and should be treated that way. So this is a moment where we must fight. And fighters, we all come from fighters. Certainly everybody in this town comes from a fighter. And you know, my family, I was raised by a mother who was tough. Our mother was all of 5 feet tall. But if you had ever met her, you would have thought she was 10 feet tall. And she was the parent who would say to us, you know, you will be judged and should be judged based on the impact that you have on the lives of other people. You will be judged based on who you lift up, who you touch, and the communities that you serve. My mother would say, don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are. My mother would say, Kamala, you may be the first to be many things, but make sure you're not the last. And my mother was that kind of parent that if you ever came home complaining about something, she would look at you with a straight face, maybe one hand on her hip, and she would say, well, what are you going to do about it? So I decided to run for president of the United States. About the current occupant of the White House. I know, but you know what? Context, right? Context. So here's a fellow who came into office with a campaign slogan about "Make America Great Again," which when a lot of us heard that, we asked, well, again, exactly for who? And all of us were very clear that he was talking about going back to something. Which begged the question, back to exactly what? Back before the Voting Rights Act? Back before the Civil Rights Act? Back before the Fair Housing Act? Back before a federal minimum wage? Back before Roe v. Wade?
Yes.
Because we're not going back.
No.
the working people. Promises to everybody from farmers to auto workers. He said, I see you, I'm gonna help you, I'm gonna take care of you. And then what'd he do? Passed a tax bill benefiting the top 1% of the biggest corporations in America. Engaged in so-called trade policy that was trade policy by tweet, born out of his fragile ego in a way that was instituted in a unilateral way, to the point that today, in Iowa, where I'm spending a lot of time, I take it in. And because it matters what's happening around our country. And so let me tell you, in spending time in Iowa, I'm meeting farmers who are looking at bankruptcy because of this so-called trade policy. You know why? Because they've got soybeans rotting in bins, which they grew based on a market they had cultivated for decades to sell those soybeans to China, but now that market is cut off. It is estimated that auto workers by the end of the year may be out of work. American families, because of this so-called trade policy that I call the Trump trade tax, are currently spending $1.4 billion more a month on everything from shampoo to washing machines.
Straighten it out for you.
He made a lot of promises. And he betrayed a lot of people. So what we all know, which is why you're here, is it is time to turn the page. It's time to turn the page. And to do that, we will successfully prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump. And we've got a big long rap sheet with which to work. Because what's on that rap sheet? Well, there is that tax bill that benefits the top 1% of the biggest corporations in America, to the point that last year, 60 of the biggest corporations in our country paid no taxes. Who here paid no taxes last year? What's on that rap sheet? Well, he said he was going to invest in America's infrastructure, which is 150, 100 years old. Remember Infrastructure Week? I guess we slept through that. Said he was going to help working people, said he was going to take care of the safety of our communities, but then he cowers under the NRA. And instead of fulfilling what he made as statements to the folks everywhere from Dayton to El Paso, nothing. You know, the press have been asking me, people have been asking me, so you think he's responsible for what happened in El Paso? Well, here's what I said, and here's how I believe it. I said, look, of course he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition. What's on that rap sheet? A policy that has been about putting babies in cages and separating children from their parents at the border in the name of border security, when what in fact it has been is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. So we will do that. We will do what is necessary to prosecute the case against 4 more years of Donald Trump, to turn the page. Because the bottom line is this. Now I'm going to get a little casual right now. The bottom line is this. Dude gotta go.
Dude gotta go. Dude gotta go. Dude gotta go. Dude gotta go. Dude gotta go. Dude gotta go.
He does. But our campaign, Greensboro, is bigger than that. It is that, and it's more than that. Because yes, we need to turn the page. But here's the thing. I want us to remember, even if November of 2016 had turned out differently, we would still be a nation in flux, we would still be a world in flux. We would still be looking at the case that around this globe we're seeing ascending and descending economies. We're seeing population shifts like we've never seen, in large part because of the climate crisis, because guess what? When there is drought, there is famine, and people leave those places because they need to eat. We would still be in the midst of flux. We would still be in the middle of a digital and industrial revolution. And so, we would still be presented with a question, which is, what will be our standing? What is our strength? What is our definition? How will we lead? These are some of the questions that are before us. And I believe then, these are the questions that challenge us to not only turn the page, but that we must be prepared to write the next chapter based on the America we believe in. The America we believe in. Let's be ready to write the next chapter of the America we believe in. And so in that chapter, we are going to discuss the fact that we have got to address what is happening today, which is that we've got an economy that is not working for working people.
That's right.
And that has to be addressed. Now, how do we know that that's the case? Well, in America today, for almost half of Americans' families, they cannot afford a $400 unexpected expense. In America today, in 99% of our counties, if you are a minimum wage worker working full-time, you cannot afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment. In America last year, 12 million people took out a loan of on average $400 from the payday lender at an interest rate often in excess of 300%. America's economy is not working for working people. And you know, I find it interesting because the current occupant of the White House loves to just walk around crowing about how, oh, this economy is doing great. You know, he says, the economy is great, he says, right? And then when you ask him, well, how exactly are you measuring the so-called greatness of this economy of yours? And they start talking about the stock market.
Yeah.
Well, that's fine if you own stocks. 72% of the stocks in America are owned by the top 10%. So then we ask, well, do you have another measure of the greatness, so-called greatness of this economy of yours? And they talk about the unemployment numbers. Well, Greensboro, I'm traveling around our country, and indeed, yes, people are working. They're working 2 and 3 jobs.
Yeah.
And in the America we believe in, let us agree, nobody should have to work more than one job to have a roof over their head and food on their table. So, what we're going to be prepared to do is address this in a number of ways, including dealing with the tax code as follows. For families that are making less than $100,000 a year, they will receive a tax credit of up to $6,000 a year that they can take home at up to $500 a month, which will be all the difference between these families being able to get through the end of the month with dignity or not. Economists have described my plan as what will be the most significant middle-class tax cut we've seen in generations.